Hello, Coach Dad here, and welcome to another chess tutorial. And today I'm going to show you what we call under promotion. In all of my videos so far, I've always showed examples where we're promoting a pawn to the most powerful piece in the game. We want that 9-point piece. We want to change that pawn into a queen because we know that the most powerful piece will eventually lead us to victory on the chessboard. But there are rare cases where we need to be able to change that pawn but not promote it into a queen. And this is what we call under promotion. And there are maybe 1 out of 10 chances that you'll say, you know what, I need to be able to change this not to a queen, but I need to change it into a lesser next powerful piece, possibly the rook in this case. So I'm about to show you a couple of examples right now of the reasons why we under promote and a couple scenarios so that way you can be aware. The reasons why we want to under promote is because number 1, we want to avoid a stalemate, or number 2, there might be opportunities to be able to under promote to possibly a knight in order to get that check and not give initiative back to our opponents. We don't want to give the move back to our opponents so that way they can counter back to us. We want to continue on with the checks. We want to continue on with the attacks. So then there might be rare cases where we under promote to either a rook, a knight, rarely a bishop. I don't know if we actually have a couple examples right there, but we'll see in these upcoming practice examples I'm about to show you right here. In this example right here, I'm about to show you white to move and being able to move right here. In our very clearest instinct, I've seen a lot of beginner players just say, oh yeah, I'll promote this right here. Once it changes into a queen, and next thing you know, the game is now a stalemate. Now it is black's turn to move. Black cannot move this pawn right now. It's gridlock, it's stuck. This king cannot move to any of these squares. So if you remember in our lessons about stalemates in the past, we have this queen covering all these squares. This king is covering these squares right now. These squares are all covered off, and also this queen is covering these squares. The king is not in check. However, the king has no more legal moves, therefore it's a stalemate. White being in a very perfect position to win the game, being up by 2 pawns and now up by another powerful piece, had an opportunity to win, but unfortunately it has gridlocked the king into a very bad stalemate, a heart-wrenching stalemate. Now, the next best move that we probably want to do is, if we are going to move this pawn up here, rather than promoting it into a queen, we will promote it into a rook. As you can see here, this rook is not blocking off these squares like the last example that we've shown right there. The king now has space to be able to move to these particular squares, and the rook is very efficient at checkmating. You're able to checkmate the king with just 1 rook, as we've seen in one of my videos previously. So then now we're under promoting into a rook, giving the king a little bit of room to breathe, avoiding that very bad stalemate, the very heart-wrenching stalemate. This king right here is probably going to try to attack the rook, but this rook is just going to come here guarded by the pawn, being able to give this king still space to be able to move around. And then we now are going to continue on with our checkmate. So then now this king going to have to move away, and then we have a nice little back rank checkmate right here, or a file checkmate. The king cannot move here because this king is blocking the square. So then this is a first example of our under promotion right here. As always, I'm going to be challenging you to follow along and be able to set up the board right in front of you. We're going to practice with the next couple of practice examples. There's not too much of under promotion material that I could really show you, so we're just going to get straight into the practices, okay? So set up the board right in front of you. Think about the reasons why we should under promote in these practice examples, and then see if that's a possibility, see if that's the best answer for you, okay? So be able to follow along. Anytime you see these numbers right here on the top right hand side, you'll be able to pause the video, set up your chessboard, and continue to practice alongside with us. And I wish you the best of luck on these upcoming examples. In this practice example, we have white to move. Can you find the best move for white in this scenario? Before I give you the correct answer, I'm going to show you what happens if you actually promote this pawn right here to a queen. If this pawn turns into a queen, this queen is now covering all the squares of the king, and now we have a gridlock right here on this black king. This black king cannot move anywhere, and now black is going to make a great move, such as moving the queen to e1, checking this king, and then whenever you're able to check this king right here, you're then able to just capture this. And of course, white only has one move, is to capture this queen with either the rook or the king, and then this now becomes a stalemated situation. Black forced itself into a stalemated situation. The next best move white would then be able to play is, of course, continue on with the pawn. And now the pawn is able to promote into a knight, a very big under promotion. But we're checking this king. We're continuing to apply pressure because black then has to worry about getting his king out of check. So then, of course, what we're able to see right here in this instance is moving this king right here. And then black cannot mess with this queen. Black cannot do the stalemating move earlier or being able to try to get out of this trap. And once this king has moved all the way to h8, this knight is now covering the square. This king cannot go back. And then this bishop then comes back with an eventual checkmate. Being able to move here, and doesn't matter if the queen blocks for this checkmate right here, is going to continue on with this checkmate. The rook is covering these squares, and the knight is covering these squares. The king is in check. The king cannot run away. It is a forced move under promotion in this example. In this example, can you find the best move for white? Okay, before I show you the correct move, I'm going to show you the wrong move first. If you do change this into a queen, this queen is not checking the king, so therefore black is able to do whichever move they choose to please, being able to come here straight for a checkmate. This king is in check, and now we can't get out because all these squares are covered. So then how can white actually salvage this position? If white be able to promote the pawn, and if white is able to promote the pawn into a knight, you then created what we call a royal fork. White would then be able to draw this game by making a bishop versus knight in-game scenario, because this king will have to get out of check, and this knight will be able to come here to capture this queen right here. In this scenario, we're able to just create a nice draw at the end, even though if white was just down by so much material. In this practice example, can you find the best move for white? Of course, I'm going to show you the incorrect answer first before giving you the correct one. If you will promote this pawn into a queen, black would then respond by playing queen to g5, being able to check this king right here. There has to be a capture. It doesn't matter if you capture the king or the rook. Let's just say the king in this example is now a stalemate. Black has gotten out of a great situation, being able to get out of this situation right now. Of course, there's no way for black to be able to get checkmated in this scenario. The correct move is if we promote the pawn into a rook. That will be the correct answer, because it doesn't matter what black decides to do. If black decides to come here to h6 in order to check the king right here, and the king moves to g4, we could try to create another check right now. Then white would then be able to run its king away to the h3 square and now black has no more checks to follow. Another response that black can also make is being able to move the queen to d1, and we have here rook can block with f3 being guarded by this rook up here at the top. And then black would then be able to go to queen to d5, and then we could bring the other rook on 8 down to f5, be able to block this check coming across right here on this rank. And then the queen is going to play queen to d1 to pin this rook right now. Next, white can respond by playing rook to f7 in order to check this king, and this king is going to move over here to g8. Once the king moves to g8, we then bring our king down here, being able to protect this rook right here. And one of the last checks that the queen can make is moving the queen over here to b1 and continue on to block that check right here. And of course, it doesn't matter what move black tries to attempt to make right now. Black really has no more checks in this scenario. In this scenario, rook on 3 leading up to f5 right here leads to rook checks right here and creating a win right here in the future. The only thing that we have left now is that the queen can only give one more check, and of course the queen, if it makes the way to b6, checking the king all the way over here, we then continue on with blocking that check. If the queen decides to come back down here to b1, we then can return back to h6, and now the queen only has one more check left in order to make this work. Coming down here, being able to check the king, and we can just follow up with blocking this check and threatening the queen at the same time. Of course, wherever the queen decides to go, decides to either sacrifice itself or decides to move somewhere else, we will then be able to create a very nice checkmate, being able to move the rook up here eventually on f8 to really block off all the squares for checkmate and protecting each other right now. In this position, can you find the best move for white? If we learned any tactics in the past, we learned that the fork can be a very powerful tactic in an in-game situation. Once the pawn moves up here to the promotional square on c8, it can then turn into a knight. And once it turns into a knight or promotes into a knight, it then has a royal fork, being able to get this queen out of the game and white being up a rook in this situation. In this practice example, we have a composition that was created or studied by Emmanuel Lasker. Can you find the best move for white in this scenario? Okay, in this scenario, it seems like black has a very strong superior position, being able to run their major pieces all the way down here to check the king for a potential checkmate, but then white has a really great move. White moves the rook to c8, checking the king and putting a threat on this rook right now, and the only move that black has to be able to respond is by capturing this rook. And of course, the next move, very great move right here, is queen takes a7. The only move that the king can only make in this position is be able to capture a7, and of course now we come in for a capture promotion, but we capture promote into a knight. Once we promote into a knight, we then create a fork right here. Black has to respond by getting out a check. We then capture this queen, and then in this position, white is up by 2 entire pawns, being able to get past this really bad position. So then white would then have this position right here, being able to get out of this danger that we have created in this situation. I hope this lesson on Underpromotion has given you that keen eye on when to promote to a piece that's other than the queen in order to avoid that stalemate or giving your opponent that initiative back and possibly checkmating with a knight or an extra bishop, or even just promoting into an extra major piece such as the rook. So being able to understand this kind of position, you might be able to see it in one of your games in the future. If you happen to do this and you record the moves, post it in the comments down below. I would love to see your Underpromotion tactics into play. Again, thank y'all very much for watching. I really appreciate all of the support you guys have given. I wish you the best of luck on your future chess games. Thank you very much, and you have a great day.